Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch, Friday, January 10th, 2025, as winter still holds its grip. Winter is definitely gripping the U.S., especially the central and eastern U.S., with another snowstorm tracking toward the eastern seaboard. I'll bring you an update on the Santa Ana winds, which of course were behind the tragic fires in the Los Angeles area. The good news there is that those winds have subsided quite a bit. The lower 48, a lot of snow cover. Actually, it's increased even more with another snowstorm still ongoing across the eastern U.S. And the temperatures are going to stay below normal. While we may have a few periods there in the eastern and central U.S. where the temperatures rise a little bit, generally speaking, the trend is definitely toward colder than normal temperatures. Well, as sun rises here across the U.S., we're using the visible satellite loop. You can certainly see the extensive cloud shield with this latest storm that we've been talking about for almost a week now, as it just shows up here in the visible satellite images, this huge area of cloudiness coming up along the front side of this trough, curving around like that. Awesome to see that in the atmosphere. And again, you got cold air streaming across the relatively warm Gulf waters. So this is interesting because when these clouds appear, it's like lake effect snow in a way. It just takes a while to pick up heat and moisture. So at first, when these cold winds blow over the relatively warm waters, there's no clouds, and all of a sudden it reaches a certain point and boom. So that's kind of interesting in a way because it outlines the coast. Happens in the winter all the time out there. Let's take a look at the snow observations putting on top of this, and boy, extensive. So we got snow connected with this particular storm in the upper atmosphere all the way from Sault Ste. Marie all the way down into Little Rock, into parts of northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and then back. This is a different, weaker storm system that's producing snow there, so a lot to talk about. This upper level low right here was spinning there just 2 days ago and was up here 2 days before that, so it dove south, kind of spun around, and zoop, went out and lost its characteristic, really in many ways, as a separate low. And what this actually became was a merging of several troughs of low pressure right here through the central U.S. That helps to explain why we have this broad area of precipitation. Normally, if it's more focused and you have low pressure more intimately connected with a tighter trough of low pressure, then you get more cyclogenesis, development of strong lows, and the snow becomes more focused with that particular feature. This is just a large area of lift out ahead of a storm, and that's why you see snow all over the place. This is the map from 9 a.m. this morning, but it does show there is a surface low centered over New Orleans. Again, not much of a factor. The freezing line runs roughly through about, well, just south of Little Rock, through extreme northern parts of Mississippi, south of Huntsville, but not quite to Birmingham, and then through the Atlanta area right there. So everything south of here is basically rain. Not seeing a lot of freezing rain reports, at least not yet. And if we go north, I think that freezing rain might be an issue. I'll show you the model data here in a minute. But as we start getting into this area here, the cold air might be shallow enough with enough warm air above it to produce a freezing rain situation, but I have not seen any ice storm advisories with this. I think they've lumped it in with the winter storm warning. Anyway, this area of the U.S. is waiting for the next storm, and it's interesting because this snowstorm started more to the south in Texas, Oklahoma, but it's going to end up roughly in the same place as the last storm. In the Pacific Northwest, not a whole lot going on. Another front coming in, very typical for this time of year for these to come in rapid succession. High pressure and fair weather over the central Rockies and northern Rockies as well, but chilly with temperatures basically in the 20s. So this is a look at Southern California, LA right here. And of course the wildfires, this is the area in which they were burning. You could still see a little bit of smoke plume coming out of that. This is just the meteorological perspective of what's going on, but if you're fighting fires and trying to contain fires, you don't want strong winds. So this has subsided greatly. Of course, at the peak of this, these hot, dry winds were blowing 90 miles per hour plus in some areas. That's just crazy. That's an almost impossible situation to get a handle on. So let's come back to winter. Winter weather advisories cradling the winter storm warning, very common. So in other words, you just see lighter precipitation on the edges, and here is where the big action is occurring. I live in Springfield, Missouri, as I have indicated earlier, so the snow is finally wrapping up as I'm looking out the window here. I'll show you a picture of that here in a minute. But the winter storm warning still intact. All of Tennessee, northern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Are they used to getting winter weather? I wouldn't say used to, but they do get it. But it is more unusual for them, so they're probably, it takes a while for them to get used to it, probably in terms of driving and everything else that people that live in the northern states almost kind of take for granted. So here's the NAM model, and as you watch my videos, you know I use various computer models. NAM is North American model, GFS is Global Forecast System, there's a European model, there's a blend of models, there's the National Weather Service's opinion of what's going to happen. I'm using the NAM here because I think it's got a pretty good handle on where the snow is headed. It might be a little fast on the advancement of the snow here because this is valid a couple of hours ago at noon, but it does show generally what's happening here as this progresses from Pittsburgh to central North Carolina. And this is where I'm saying this area of expanding sleet and a little bit of freezing rain in the Carolinas, northern Georgia needs to be watched a little bit. But this forward speed of the system is working in favor because it is moving pretty quickly. In fact, this is 12 a.m. tonight, midnight Saturday. Heavy snows in the Virginia area, and again that narrow band of potential freezing rain there before it changes over to rain. And then tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. that's the same low, by the way, that I circled over New Orleans a few maps ago. So coming to an end early on Saturday with just another weak disturbance in the upper atmosphere producing lighter snows, and from Cleveland on down to West Virginia and into Pittsburgh still on Saturday morning. As far as the snow forecast, National Weather Service's blended opinion of this is for probably about a 3 to 5 inch band right in through here. Heavier amounts forecast for central Tennessee, and that seems to be a fairly accurate representation of what's going to happen here over the next 24 hours only. Well, another snowstorm, and this snowstorm did overlay last week's snowstorm. So if you look around Kansas City, you know, you're seeing snow reports of 2, 3, maybe a little bit more in some areas. I see one there for 6 inches around Butler, Missouri. So that's on top of the snow that fell last week. But here are all the new snow totals down here. If you just kind of sample around Oklahoma City, you know, you're getting about 4 to 5 inches, maybe a little less. But certainly these yellow dots are where it snowed more. Some reports around Tulsa are getting to around 7 inches. These orange dots, these are 10-inch totals here, almost 10 at least, through north central Arkansas, around the Little Rock area. As I mentioned before, I'm from Springfield. Right out my door, I'll show you a picture. There it is. That's 6 inches of snow on my back deck. But pretty common, 5 to 6 inch totals right around the Springfield area. If we head off to the east, snow in the deep south, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, Georgia, getting 3-inch snow totals, 4-inch snow totals around there. And of course, that snow is continuing to head off toward the east for portions of North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina as well. Snow cover in the central U.S. This is interesting. We're at about 45%. The last time I showed this map, it was 45 too, but I was rounding the percentages. They actually report that to a decimal point. So it actually has gone up. And of course, none of this snow down here was there on the last map. So that's kind of interesting. But to say you're approaching 50% of the lower 48 covered in snow, and it's also conspicuous just where the storms occur, but you would expect to see it around Minneapolis, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Minnesota, but so far anyway, that has not materialized. So are we going to stay cool, and are there other storms? One clue you can look at is the 500 millibar flow. This is a forecast from the Global Forecast model system, and again, just keep in mind that the general idea here is that winds flow along these channels like this, and anything that is north of the polar jet, which is right here, anything up here is going to run cold. Okay, so what's happening with this? We'll go to Monday morning. The polar jet's still pretty well defined here with little disturbances moving along it. The stronger winds are driven by temperature differences between the cold Arctic air and the warm tropical air in Florida. Here is 6 a.m. Tuesday. Again, huge temperature contrast. The polar vortex, if you will, is right there. Another disturbance coming on down Tuesday morning should actually come around as a trough of low pressure, bringing another reinforcing shot of Arctic air to the central U.S. by Wednesday and into Thursday when that feature moves to right here. But after that, there's some moderation going on across the northern Rockies, and that's going to spill into the northern plains. And I'll show you that in the long-range forecast. So the Climate Prediction Center issues these outlooks. This is for temperature for the next 6 to 10 days. And 6 to 10 days in the future there. And so basically, the eastern seaboard is just going to be forecast to be below normal. At least what this is a percentage of likelihood. So the deeper the color, the more percentage of likelihood you're going to be cold. And then here's that slight warming trend: Fargo, Bismarck, Minneapolis. It's not really a snow melt because there's no snow there. And so the shorter range predictions like this, when compared to the 8 to 14, are going to pick up maybe the larger variations in temperature. But if you look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, you still see a strong tendency for the central and eastern U.S. to be cold, with the highest probabilities from St. Louis due east to the Atlantic Ocean. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like it if you think of it. Also to subscribe to the channel. Lots more weather content and so much more. Have a good day. Be safe out there, and we'll see you in the next video.